right now, and then you can begin whenever you're ready.
Okay, so we decided to do our presentation on the, we wanted to analyze for-profit and not-for-profit institutions and the role that the development professional plays in those two different institutions. So the first thing we wanted to do was to examine not-for-profit and for-profit institutions. And you note that not-for-profit institutions, earnings tend to be reinvested into the organization, and they're not distributed to shareholders for personal profit. So there's a non-distributional constraint. Some of these institutions are run by state governments or different religious organizations, and a lot of them are funded through state appropriations. Students receive government grants. There's usually a return on investment, and not usually a lot of tuition and fees is accounted for in their revenue. So that would mean that ideally student loans would be generally low in a not-for-profit. And if they are, you'll find that it's through these different state appropriations and various grants. Not-for-profit institutions also have special tax standing. So your donation to one of these institutions would be a charitable contribution. So it's deductible on your taxes. And the way that that benefits these institutions is that the money essentially goes back into the institution. So they're not having to pay for these taxes. Whatever they pay for is outright. And ideally that goes to benefit whatever the institution is standing for, whatever programs that they are standing for. So they basically invest back into themselves. In not-for-profit institutions, the focus tends to be on the student. They're not focused on trying to make money. They're not focused on other things besides working for the student. So in an institution like this, position of development professional would be an ideal position to have, because you play a huge role in what it is that the institution is doing. Everything kind of, they kind of reinvest into each other. So
can I add to that?
Yes, absolutely.
So from the perspective in terms of reinvestment, it's typically when a gift is made to a nonprofit institution or an institution like a Penn State or a private institution, it goes into an endowment. The funds tend to be restricted. If they're unrestricted funds, they can be used for institutional needs across the board. But if they're restricted, they tend to go into an endowment, and then they're invested. You spend a certain portion of an endowment. So for most institutions, the average is a 4.5% expend rate. And so you grow that endowment in order to serve the needs of the institution in perpetuity. So from student support to faculty support to program support, if it's in an endowment, then it's there to help generations of individuals who are associated with the organization.
All right. So next we take a quick look at the for-profit colleges and universities. One of the key differences is that the money earned at these colleges and universities, while reinvested into the students and education, some of the profits are distributed back to the company or shareholders that oversee the college or university. A lot of these institutions are corporate owned and are a subsidiary of a bigger organization. Another key difference between their funding model is that a lot of these for-profit colleges rely primarily on tuition and fees, which means that student loans play a huge role in the financing of the institution. They don't have state appropriations necessarily to fall back on. So if costs go up, unfortunately, tuition and fees typically go up as well. And the students are sometimes left with a higher student loan burden than potentially going for a for-profit school.
So am I drawing? Okay, there we go. So on to St. Augustine College in Chicago, Illinois. This is a primarily Hispanic college. They talk about their focus on bilingual education. It's a small institution with very limited enrollment. So I think would be the word would be commuter institution potentially. There were several offices in and around Chicago for students to access or where classes are taught. The graduation rate is around 38%, and you can see from the chart and the information about core revenue and expenses, what they're making from tuition and fees versus what their expenditure rates are. They're receiving about 65% of their core revenue is coming from tuition and fees. And in terms of their philanthropic support, it's actually a small component of the funding that they have coming in. That's probably, I would guess, just from my experience in the industry, it's a function of the size of the institution rather than the budget model. I think if the institution were larger, it could potentially be a larger portion of the revenue that they're generating. And when we were doing research on these schools, I had a hard time finding a lot of information about their advancement operation. And that would also suggest that it's not necessarily as sophisticated as, a development operation at Penn State or a development operation at Cornell. And I mean, these are big, behemoth institutions with really large 400-person advancement divisions raising, Penn State raises, I think, $320 million a year, and Cornell's raising about $600 million a year. So when you're talking about a St. Augustine, that's a really small organization. Most of the donors to an organization like a St. Augustine are going to be community, businesses, some alumni, most likely the trustees. I'm sure the faculty also have, their hand in supporting the institution from a private dollar perspective. The events that they host on an annual basis in support of St. Augustine College, I think, is where they're seeing some of those gifts. But they do also offer a significant amount of scholarship support, or at least grant support. So that would suggest that there's funding coming from either government resources or private foundations. And again, it was difficult to ascertain from the limited information available on their website exactly where the private monies are coming from.
All right.
So the next college that we examined was Morrisville State College in Morrisville, New York, which is a public not-for-profit institution. Their enrollment was comparable to St. Augustine at 2,940. Their graduation rate is only 27%, and that was in their 2007 cohort. Their core revenue is primarily brought in from state appropriations. Their tuition and fees only accounts for about 18% of their revenue. Government grants and contracts was another bigger portion at about 24%. Private gifts, grants, and contracts only accounted for 6%. And then other core revenue was only 1%. What you won't see here is any kind of investment return. Even though they are a not-for-profit, there's obviously no benefit to them in that. Their expenses, their core expenses, is primarily in instruction, which says that they're taking a lot of that money and they're putting that back into the faculty and the administration of the university to make sure that, sorry, not the administration, but the faculty and the teaching staff, to make sure that the students are really getting a higher quality education. And they also spend a significant amount of their money on other various ways of support. So in looking at this, I learned that at Morrisville, a lot of students receive some form of financial aid. And even though about half of its population receives state funding, and I noted that there's no revenue coming in from any private gifts or grants or anything like that. So their fundraising obviously is not showing that it's that strong, but as Carol mentioned, I think that goes to show the size of the university. So we're dealing with a generally smaller state institution at that. So they have limited resources, and I just think that they're not able to account for a bigger portion of that.
All right. So the college that I looked at was a private for-profit college based out of New York. Um, Enrollment is similar to the other two colleges, but really we were just looking at the for-profit revenue, and you can see based on the chart that 99% of their core revenue comes from tuition and fees. Expenditures are similar, even though by percentage basis they do tend to spend a little bit more on student services. And as luck would have it, this is not something that I had planned. This college is actually scheduled to close its doors in December of 18 due to falling enrollment.
Wow.
Because the revenue is so tightly linked to the tuition and fees, dramatic changes in enrollment can significantly impact these for-profit universities or colleges to the point that in this case they are actually ceasing operation in December of 2018. On a personal note, based just on for-profits, I am a product of a for-profit university. My veterinary degree is from Ross University, which is a for-profit school under the umbrella of DeVry. And so I have seen, I think, the better sides of for-profit. But unfortunately, in this case, this is a smaller college that unfortunately seems to have been unable to adjust to falling enrollment based on what you can see here, based on the high percentage of tuition and fees.
Adam, just anecdotally, we were studying at a university in 545 that was in upstate New York around Lake George, and that was a not-for-profit university, and they recently closed their doors as a result of a very controversial expenditure of a piece of land that actually led them to bankruptcy. Really interesting article that we studied in sort of a case study format in 545, but the higher education and the budget model around higher education is a hot topic in my industry anyway, in terms of trying to figure out the longevity and what it looks like moving forward. And there are a lot of conversations around smaller colleges in smaller communities not making it, and what that impact is going to be on the landscape of higher ed and opportunities for people to have choices and options. Just an aside.
Thanks.
Yep.
So moving into the next slide.
Yep, there we go.
Okay. So in terms of the role of development in higher education, most colleges and universities, if they're able to carve out a space for a philanthropic organization in their institution, recognize the importance of development and the potential impact on the bottom line, where state appropriations or corporate and foundation relations revenues or even federal resources are constrained. Private philanthropy can allow for some flexibility for the institution and also can move the needle in a way that some of the other restricted dollars are not able to do so. So development really functions to carry out the strategic vision of the president in most cases. And then it goes down from there. If it's a larger institution, it's the president and then the provost and the deans. And it's to secure funding beyond the traditional resources. And philanthropic support can be anything from an outright cash gift to creating an endowment to gift in kind, which could be equipment or software for a particular class, or a planned gift, which is a gift that someone might leave through their estate. And in terms of the colleges that we analyzed, St. Augustine College was showing $801 I'm assuming, of 6% of their core revenue is coming from private support. Morrisville was showing around $1,400 from their core revenue in private support. Again, 6%, very similar numbers. And then Briarcliff, as we discussed, is a for-profit, has $0 that are coming from private philanthropy. So in terms of St. Augustine's mission and vision around development, they state that institutional advancement seeks to advance public understanding, build and strengthen lifelong relationships, and enhance philanthropy and support of St. Augustine's University. I mean, and as I noted in the previous slide, philanthropy is really about engagement with the institution, and it can be alumni, it can be friends, it could be parents, it could be corporations or foundations that might have an interest in furthering the mission of a college. Now, in a small college like St. Augustine, I think there's going to be a lot of community investment because there's workforce development, there's an economic development component to the institution being there and to it existing and thriving and being successful. And so institutional advancement offices in smaller colleges are going to be focused on the local community and utilizing those relationships and strengthening those relationships in order to have them reinvest in the health of the institution. Next slide.
So development at Morrisville State College, their offices are known as the Office of Institutional Advancement, which is very profound, I think. And one of the quotes off their website is that a gift to Morrisville State College is a gift to student success. So Morrisville has this wonderful slideshow presentation that they offer to anyone who's interested in giving, and if you're interested in watching the video. And they thank their donors profusely. They have various students throughout the university that thank their donors. And they note that a lot of these students are given these much needed scholarships in order to even make it to college, in order to even finish their degrees, and in order to even succeed. They rely on these donations. That's their pitch, which was really great. But I think unfortunately for Morrisville, as in the case with St. Augustine, I think their population is so small and they're reaching such a limited amount of people that unfortunately they're not pulling back what they need to. And that was very interesting to learn because the presentation is there. They had a very good pitch to try to raise these funds. And unfortunately, you can tell by the stats, it's just not helping them out very much.
So the roles in the Office of Development, I mean, and this is just a snapshot, and this varies from institution to institution. There's a little bit of title inflation in my industry, and that's in part because our industry has a human resource pipeline issue, much like other industries where you're looking at generational turnover. But also here, the concept of a development professional as a profession is actually fairly young in terms of its age. You could use Penn State as an example here. They didn't really start seriously fundraising into the mid 80s. And the concept of growing a professional from, you know, someone going to school as an undergraduate to become a development professional is a fairly new concept. So I went from Penn State, where I was a director of development and alumni relations, to a role at Cornell, which was a promotion, but to an associate dean. So there can be associate dean roles, there can be director roles, there are associate vice presidents, there are principal gifts offices, there are major gifts. But also in a full advancement operation, you also have alumni affairs and programming that goes along with that. You have stewardship and programming that goes along with that, which is the process of thanking individuals for their gifts. And then you have somebody who manages the endowment and is making sure that people are expending the funds in the way in which they were supposed to be expended. There are annual giving coordinators. Marketing communications is a huge part of this. And then there's a whole back-end process around gift processing and donor relations that requires a fair amount of infrastructure. So it's a pretty complex organizational structure when you're looking at a big institution. When you're looking at a smaller institution like the ones that we've highlighted in this presentation, sometimes one person will be doing all of those things, depending upon an institution's commitment and ability to commit and invest in a development operation. An interesting statistic about sort of the industry and professional opportunities, for every 8 jobs that are open at sort of the director level in development and higher education, there's 1 qualified professional in the country for that job.
Wow.
So recruiters love our industry. It's a good industry for recruiters, and it's a good career in terms of, you know, the job itself is a lot of fun.
Oh, that's mine. Sorry.
Yep,
We
that's
just
okay.
wanted we just wanted to conclude with just a quick kind of summary of our interviews that we conducted. Mine really wasn't based in the main topic of what we were talking about, but I had interviewed the former dean of the School of Health Careers at the college that I work at now. And she just gave some really good advice looking forward, that if I were to pursue that path, that it's a difficult path, but it's one that if you have empathy and get to know people, that you could succeed. But it does tend to be more administrative than instructional, which was kind of surprising given that the faculty handbook states that there's supposed to be some instruction, but she said she doesn't do much of it. So
I had the great opportunity to have a conversation with Senior Vice President for Development and Alumni Relations Emeritus at Penn State, Rod Kirsch. He's kind of an icon in my industry, and he's one of these humble Midwestern guys. He's raised billions of dollars at many different institutions, and most significantly at Penn State. But during our conversation, you know, he shared some really profound statements about the importance of mentorship. And he did mention good institutions, meaning, you know, align yourself with strong brands. It's good for your resume and it's good for your career. Hard work, family, and of course, being surrounded by really good colleagues are all really motivating factors in building a career in higher ed and development as well. When you're a leader, you try to create order. And I thought this was a great quote. And Sarah smartly pulled it out. You know, he noted that you need to treat people fairly, but not always equally. And there's a lot of truth in that statement. And when you're managing a development operation, so.
Yeah, I thought that was a really profound quote.
You know, he managed an organization of 400 people. I'm managing an organization right now of 12, and everything is not created equal. You know, not everyone gets a trophy. It's not like soccer now. You know, I watch my kids play soccer and everybody gets a trophy. Everybody's a winner. But in the real world, everybody's actually not a winner, and that's okay, you know, and there are different jobs and each one of them is equally important to the function of the organization and to the success of the organization. And the whole thought of focusing on being fair and understanding that all things are not equal and that's okay. That's a really interesting way to think about leadership. So yeah, he's a great person to talk to.
So I interviewed Janet Gruschow, who is the department head of the chemistry department at Princeton University, and she's the former assistant to the president of Princeton University. That was Shirley Tillman. She was the assistant too. And Janet had a very interesting path that I really connected with because she was not directed in any particular way. She just kind of fell into one position and then, you know, forged these relationships that she echoed throughout our interview about these lasting relationships that really connected her to new positions and to new opportunities. So she really stressed the importance of that. And she continually stressed how these relationships were really the key to her advancement. In her experience, she was able to connect with administrators, she was able to connect with faculty, and she established a very good repertoire with a lot of the faculty, which in her particular field, she was in the sciences, and that can be a very tricky thing to do. So it was very interesting learning from her how she was able to work with all these different people in all these different positions. And she also did a little bit of sponsorship work, corporate sponsorship, which connects back to our insight into development. And it was interesting to learn what is involved and the level of networking and connectivity that you really have to have with people in these roles.
and then that concludes the presentation. We have a couple slides of references that we used.
Okay, great. Yeah, very thorough list of references would be very helpful. Well, let me, I think we still have Kim on the line. Good. Kim, do you have any comments or questions for the group?
Well, I just wanted to say, so none of you guys are from the area where SUNY Morrisville is, right?
No.
No.
I just think it's interesting. SUNY Morrisville is about 45 minutes from me. So when I saw that come up, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So I thought that was really interesting. And one of my daughter's best friends actually goes there for nursing. So she'll graduate next month. So I just thought that was really interesting when I saw it pop up. And that's why it caught me off guard and then I have to remember from 545, core revenue is not, the tuition listed under core revenue is not the tuition rate.
Right.
Because, which is where I was getting a little bit of the disconnect on Morrisville, on how they're doing, because I'm calculating around a 50% discount rate, but we're saying that they're not doing a really good job with getting money in. So I wasn't really sure how that all worked. But when Dr. Loomis sends the presentation out to everybody, then I'll take a look at it there. But I thought it was really interesting to see the difference in the not-for-profits versus the for-profits. And I think if people aren't in higher ed, they don't realize that, people assume, I work at a private school, so they assume that private schools are for profit. They think like that school I work for is like making loads of money because we're not a state school, so it's interesting to to try to get people to understand the dynamics of that. So I thought you guys did a really good job in trying to explain the difference between that, and the dynamics of institutional advancement, college advancement, whatever we want to call it. Our school, we don't even try to remember what their name is because unfortunately it changes quite often. So,
That's not
but
very
tomorrow,
good for them.
I mean, the thing is, it's hard because like I've been at the school for 5 years and it's changed twice. Well, it was one, and now it's the second name, and we're on college advancement. Yeah, they're college advancement, But they're a great group. I mean, they are 20 of the hardest working people you ever want to meet, and they work really hard to put together. They just had they closed the books on the most successful campaign ever for our students in about 4 months ago, and tomorrow is all in for Hartwick, and so it's our day of giving. And yeah, so I feel for the people who do that work because it's thankless. I don't think the people on campus realize just what we wouldn't have if people weren't doing that work. We have a beautiful fitness center, the William Campbell Fitness Center, that came from a direct donation from William Campbell, who was the former CEO of Intuit, who unfortunately passed away. And, we have this beautiful facility, and that was a lot of hard work from the president, from one of our trustees, who was a good friend of his, and the people who are pounding the pavement every day. And, sometimes they're getting $5 and sometimes they're getting $5 million. And it really, they work so hard for that. And to those people who do that work, I really think they deserve an awful lot of praise because without it, so many of our students at my school couldn't come because we wouldn't be able to support the discount rate that we are currently offering. Some of our students, some of our needier students are getting upwards of a 77% discount rate, needy and, merit-based. Yeah. So without that without that hard work, we wouldn't have it. So I appreciate the hard work that went into this, and I hope it encourages people to realize just how important this work is, so that more people do it and aren't, afraid to do it, because it really is important and hard work. So thank you. I thought you did a really
Some people
nice
don't
job.
want to. Some people don't want to ask for money, and it's actually not that
That's
hard.
funny. That's funny, because I'm the assistant director of student accounts, which we have a big thing about renaming things, because they didn't like the bursar, so we have to call it student accounts. But so like I have to ask people for money all the time. But you would think it'd be easier. Like you'd want to give money after you graduate because you've already got your diploma, But I hope that this will encourage people to consider this path. So you did a really nice job. Thank you. Thanks for letting me sit in.
Thanks, Kim.
Thank you.
And Kieran, any questions for the group?
No, because I missed the part I wanted to hear.
Oh, well,
Yes, I had to run off on mommy duty.
no.
I was very interested in the development professional and the not-for-profit. And I don't know if they covered it in the presentation already, but are they more frustrated these days, or are they seeing a real decline in what they can get people to give?
I can answer that question. I mean,
Good question, Carol.
the answer is no. I mean, I think given the budget environment in higher education at most institutions, development professionals are actually more important now than they've ever been. I think the financial environment is such that, I mean, the stock market in the United States, at least, let's just talk about the United States, because I think other, internationally, if you're talking about the UK or Australia, or I'm not sure what it's like in the Caribbean, I mean, some countries are about 10 years behind the United States in terms of developing philanthropic culture around higher educational institutions, because most had a culture where, their education was paid for. It was supported by their government. So they're trying to create a culture of philanthropy, whereas it exists in the United States and it's part of who we are. I don't think our work is harder. I think if you're doing your job right as a development professional and spending the time of cultivating and engaging and having conversations around what your needs are in a really high level, effective manner, people are going to give. That's been my experience anyway.
Okay.
But it varies institution to institution.
All right. It's hard for us and what you said, hit the nail on the head, and didn't think about that we are building that culture. Because, for example, I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, and my government pays 100% for undergrad and 50% for grad.
Right. So whenever you go to those people who graduated, 50 years ago or 60 years ago, or let they be 20 years ago even, and ask them for a gift, they don't understand necessarily why they would have to make a gift to help fund someone else's education,
right?
Because they are coming from a space in which it's already paid for. So
yeah,
it's a harder argument.
Yeah. Thank you.
Very good. Yeah, I think, Carol, maybe the climate for big gifts is positive, and at least I'm feeling that, seeing that, because I think there's a disparity in wealth in the U.S. I mean, there are people
Absolutely
getting richer and richer,
Yeah.
and are becoming more philanthropic. The big donor, if you can get the big donors who have money. Penn State just, I think, received its biggest gift ever with the College of Communications.
Yeah, the Belisario gift.
Yeah, it's $30 million.
Mm-hmm.
So those take a lot of time and a lot of hard work. And
the hockey gift was bigger.
Was it really? Okay.
Yeah.
But
that was $100 million. So
I agree with with Kim and Karen. I mean, I think it takes a great skill set to do that development work well, and because it's a variety of skills, not just relationship management, but attention to detail and understanding all the aspects of various types of gifts that you can do. And and I think you're absolutely right. The profession of development is growing and changing from what it was 25 years ago.
Yeah.
So, and I thought you, with your slide that showed the different types of positions, that was very helpful. I think our students to see the different types of roles that you can play within an
Right.
institutional advancement office. That was great. And I'm,
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
the other thing I'll share is I'm hearing from Karen Paulson that we're close to kind of working with the College of Liberal Arts on a philanthropy certificate where our students could get the M.Ed and the philanthropy certificate or take some courses in philanthropy that might help qualify people for development positions.
That's great. Yeah, Sophie Penny developed that. I know her, and she actually is one of my mentors, and
Wonderful.
that's a great opportunity for anyone who's considering this profession. I can tell you that, you know, as from a leadership role, the profession is in desperate need of qualified people who are passionate and committed to the work, and institutions need development professionals. So if you're looking for a career path with security, long term, quite frankly, this is a really good space to be in.
Great.
So
No, well, we should do more awareness building about that. You know, just different career paths, particularly development. Because I know we've had a lot of our graduates go into the development field
yeah,
with the M.Ed in higher ed. You know a lot of those at Penn State.
I do.
So maybe that they were helpful in having us recruit you to the program.
Yeah.
But I think, I think obviously you covered that really well, and it's fascinating to me. You know, how you looked at that within the context of the different case study institutions and how that differs, public versus you know, private, not-for-profit versus for-profit. I mean, it never occurred to me that, well, of course, you're not going to get the tax deduction if you contribute to a for-profit institution. No wonder they don't have development offices.
There's no incentive.
There's no incentive to do that, and obviously, Adam, that's why you know, the institution you looked at struggled, and Briarcliff ended up closing. So, and I'm familiar with DeVry. I mean, I think there is, you know, we tend to lump all the for-profits and all the horror stories about for-profits, and then we develop a bias against them. I'm guilty a little bit of that, you know, because some of those things have been published where, you know, the incentives for staff to get rewarded, you know, really weren't consistent with a good value set. I say they got, and maybe recruited students were the for-profit or encouraged student loan debt and things like that. You know, the federal government, I think, has been monitoring that. But that's just a small fraction of the institutions and what goes on. And there are some outstanding, innovative for-profits that have done great work for a long time. You know, the DeVry is a good example, and I think Phoenix is another good example. You know, they've all had their issues and problems, but it's an important contributor, I think, to the diversity of higher education in the U.S. So I don't want to paint them with a broad brush, although obviously, you know, I would like the mission and the focus and the goals to be on student success and achievement as opposed to the bottom line. But we're all, you know, people that work for even poor or public institutions, we're all looking at the bottom line, particularly people that work in outreach or World Campus, and how many students can we bring in, how much net profit, we even use that term, how much net profit are we bringing in versus income over expense for different programs. I mean, we kind of use that corporate or for-profit language even at a public institution. And we need to look at those revenue streams because of the declining state funding that we're all experiencing across the U.S. And I think, Carol, that's why development offices have grown, because we needed to look at in the public institutions for other types of support outside of student tuition and state support.
Absolutely.
So you all covered that very well. I love the idea that you did institutional profiles of institutions that we haven't heard of really that much, and you know, you covered that well. And I think the fact that there's a Hispanic serving institution in Chicago, that's interesting to me.
Yeah.
That could develop there and is doing reasonably well with with solid enrollments. So let me just wrap up and ask each of you just to reflect on this process of putting it together. I think you learned some things maybe as you postponed the presentation to just give yourself some extra time. You pulled it together, which obviously, you know, this isn't going to be the first time you pulled a presentation together, you know, for a major project that you're working on. But you did that, and it was very well done, very well researched. But you just needed some extra time, and that was fine. But just reflect on the process of collaborating. What were some of the challenges in doing that, and what are some of the takeaways or lessons learned from this assignment? So, Carol, do you want to start?
Sure. I want to give kudos to Sarah, quite frankly, for keeping us afloat. She was a great team leader, and
Thank you.
I think, you know, just speaking from a personal perspective, I started a new job in the middle of this semester while I'm taking 2 graduate courses, and my family's in one state and I'm in another. And I think for me, time has been, I'm a pretty good time manager, but I can tell you that when you start a new job and you're toward the end of a semester and taking 2 courses, drinking from the fire hose is not even an apt way to describe what's happening to you. So, you know, I applaud my team members for helping to keep us on track, and really appreciate the fact that the group dynamic allowed us to get it done, and that you were tolerant, Dr. Loomis, of our need for some more time. That was also very gracious of you, and we're appreciative of that. I think we all worked well together. You know, Google Hangout is my jam. It's an easy way to have conversations with people and to get things done. And I thought that was really effective. And, you know, I think we communicated when we could and when we needed to. And, you know, my sense is we're all very busy professionals with families, and you know, we hit crunch time and we had to get it together, and we did. So I'm pleased with the experience. I think it's been a good one. And, you know, recognizing that we have competing priorities for our time, and trying to work around that and work through that as a group. And I think we did a good job. And Sarah, by the way, honestly, she gets all the credit in the world for making the presentation look the way that it does. Because I can tell you, 2 days ago, no, nothing like that. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
You need someone with that skill set for sure. Yeah, Sarah, any takeaways for you?
Well, that no matter how much you plan and schedule and you think that you're going to do things a certain way, life happens, and sometimes you have to do everything a different way. So I think if anything, just being confident in your abilities, your colleagues' abilities, your classmates' abilities, just, you know, having that confidence in everybody's knowledge and, like I said, abilities, you'll get things done, and things will come together. And that, I think, has been the biggest takeaway for me, because all these deadlines just kind of freak me out. And, you know, knowing that no matter what, they still come together and it still works out just fine. It's been an experience.
Good. And Adam, any?
I think the big insights have already been touched on, in that sometimes the best laid plans fall by the wayside pretty early on. I mean, we had a nice schedule set up and still required some extra time there at the end to pull things together. It's been an experience for me. I've been out of school for, I don't know what everybody else has. So getting back in that role as a student in a completely new area of study, you know, has been a learning experience. And then working through the project, while I do projects at work, doing things like this is getting me back in the groove for the remaining, 30 some hours to finish the master's degree. So it's been good. Both this project and the course have really prepared me, I think, to hit the ground running in the next couple of weeks when summer starts.
19 days.
19 days.
Thank you for that. I wanted to know how much of a break I had before I had to start again.
It was 20 days yesterday when I turned in my last assignment.
Thanks. You're doing a countdown like I'm doing at Cornell. I'm on week 3, day 1. So
Yeah. I'm reading books for fun.
Yes. Well, it's great, Adam and Karen, to have you in the course. You know, we don't get too many people coming back for the master's after you already have your doctoral degree, and but we think, you know, there's a role for our program in preparing you, you know, for a broader contribution at your institution beyond teaching. You know, whether that's department head or you know, senior level administrative position, dean, whatever the case might be. I think if you have this degree, it gives you a unique perspective on higher education, how to think strategically about how the different parts of an institution should work together to serve students. And I hope the experience of being a student helps you to be a better faculty member. I don't know if that's the case, but it's kind of interesting to be on the other side after teaching as well. But no, it's been great, and we have a few other faculty that are in our program as well. It's a wonderful contribution, I think, and great for the rest of the class to have your perspective too.
Yeah, it's definitely been it's been eye-opening getting back into the groove of things, but hopefully it'll continue to work out well.
Great. And then it didn't bother me at all that you needed extra time. I expect you to, you know, ask for extensions for anything that you need to do in our courses. And I always say, I think I mentioned this to you, Sarah, in a note, you know, I never want the course to interfere with family commitments or job transitions, Carol. You know, you have to prioritize some things in your life when you're trying to balance everything. And I always put family first, because you can't get those moments back, whether it's a, you know, baseball game or a music concert or something, and you need an extra day or two because you want to attend to that. Certainly, I think our program has that culture, and you know, where you can do that and help, you know, relieve a little bit of the stress. It's not easy to have a demanding job full time, and then you know, family commitments, and then finish this degree program. So I know when I was in graduate school, you know, it took me 8 years to get through the PhD program, where most people did it in 3 or 4 years. But, you know, I had young kids and I didn't want to miss anything, and I wanted to coach Little League and things like that. So I, you know, remember those days when I hear your challenges and stories. So that would be my advice. If you always put family first, you'll be okay in life and in your career, I think, too. So it's been a pleasure to spend the evening with you and see you all doing so well, looking so good. You look better in person than you do on paper. I was showing off my head before. I don't look at all like my picture online.
No.
I'm off chemotherapy now, and it will grow back this summer. And
Excellent.
I had a little setback
Good for
with
you.
the beginning of this semester. I had a liver lesion, and that was successfully ablated with microwave heat. They go in and actually burn the tumor, and now it's gone. So it's a bit of a miracle that I'm still here. I was diagnosed in the fall of 2014, and I thought I better announce this to the class because the doctors couldn't tell me whether I would live to see the end of the semester.
Wow.
So I'm a bit of a mystery to the medical field. They don't know why I'm doing so well, but I feel great. I have no pain. And I tell people, don't worry about me. I'm not sick. I just have cancer. So otherwise, I'm doing okay.
That's a good perspective. Well, you do
Yeah.
look excellent, so
No,
that's good.
I feel good, and it's been very life-giving for me to interact with you and read your work and seeing you progress and do so well. So,
And I'll say, without the support of you and Karen, I probably would have been out about 5 weeks ago. So
no, we want
you
to
guys make it work.
yeah, well, that's good because we expect everybody that starts the program to finish it. That's our expectation. So we're going to be after you. And you can take, you know, if you take time off, you can get back to it. I wouldn't recommend taking 8 years to finish the master's degree. But if it takes 8 years,
That's the limit for us, isn't it?
yes.
It is, yeah.
But I know all of you will do amazingly well. And if there's anything I can do to help you, I'm only an email away. So just let me know. And enjoy the rest of the evening, what's left of it, and the rest of the week and 2 weeks before you start up again in the summer.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Bye-bye.